Hello. My name is Penelope Hart, and last Christmas, my own sister stood up in front of our entire family, raised her wine glass, and toasted to me as the extra nobody. They laughed. They actually laughed. And the next morning? My face was on the front page of Forbes. The house smelled of nutmeg and sugar when I stepped inside. My breath fogged the entryway mirror, the one my mother insisted stayed spotless all year. She'd already lit the candles on the mantel, arranged holly around the photos of smiling faces that didn't include mine. The sound of Christmas music floated from the dining room, soft, cheerful, perfectly rehearsed. I set down my coat and forced a smile. Maybe this year would be different. Maybe there would be a seat with my name on it. The chandelier light was warm, golden, a little too bright. I walked into the dining room last, as always. Every chair had a card tucked against the plate: Celine, Mom, Dad, Uncle Greg, Aunt Tessa, the cousins, all lined up like a catalog of belonging. At the far end, a folding chair waited, unmarked. My heart tapped once, a dull, familiar rhythm. I adjusted a crooked napkin. No one noticed. Mom looked up briefly from carving the roast. "You made it, honey. We thought the roads might be bad." "They were fine," I said, sliding into the folding chair. The metal squeaked beneath me, a sound sharp enough to make my cousin giggle. Celine sat at the center, red velvet dress hugging her shoulders, every gesture shining. She poured wine into her glass and laughed at something Dad said. The table gleamed under candlelight, silver, crystal, a portrait of a family that only existed in photographs. I reached for the water pitcher. Celine's voice sliced through the room. "Let's raise a glass to everyone who made it home this Christmas." Her smile was perfect, the kind people practice. Even the extra nobody in the corner. Laughter broke like glass around me. Dad chuckled, shaking his head as if to say kids these days. Mom pressed her lips together, not to protest, but to hide a smirk. My hand froze halfway to my glass. For a second, I thought maybe I'd misheard. The wine glimmered dark red under the light. My fingers tightened around the stem until my knuckles turned white. I could stand up. I could shout. I could ask them what I ever did to deserve this. But the words stuck like ash in my throat. I smiled instead. That small, practiced curve of the lips that says, "I'm fine. I always am." The laughter faded into the clatter of forks and knives. Celine went on about her new contract, the apartment in Portland, the boyfriend who cooked her breakfast. My chest burned. Every breath came shallow. Mom reached for the salt, her bracelet catching the light. I slowly lifted the napkin to my mouth, wiped away nothing, and folded it neatly on the table. "Excuse me," I said softly. No one looked up. I stood, smoothing my skirt. My chair scraped the floor, a sound that should have made them notice. But they kept talking. A cousin whispered something about dessert. I slipped my coat from the back of the chair. The air around me smelled of cinnamon and something sweet burning in the oven. My shoes sank into the rug as I walked to the doorway. I looked once at their silhouettes, the perfect family framed in gold light, and then turned away. No one stopped me. Outside, the cold hit like a clean slap. Snow drifted under the street light, gentle, unbothered. My car sat at the curb, roof powdered white. I brushed off the windshield with my sleeve, fingers stiff from the chill. When I slid into the driver's seat, the silence was thick. My breath fogged the window. For a moment, I didn't turn the key. The steering wheel was cold against my palms. A memory flickered, the smell of frosting and candle wax from my 14th birthday. Celine had a DJ and a balloon arch that year. Mine came 3 weeks later, store-brand cake, a candle jammed in the middle, Mom saying, "We almost forgot." I remember pretending that didn't hurt either. The car engine rumbled to life. The dashboard clock glowed 6:47. Through the windshield, the house shimmered faintly behind curtains. Laughter leaked out when someone opened the door. For a heartbeat, I thought about going back, making them see me. Instead, I shifted into drive. The tires crunched over the icy street. Streetlights reflected off the snow, small halos blinking in the dark. My hands trembled against the wheel, a tremor that wasn't cold anymore. I passed the park where Celine and I used to skate. Dad had always held her hand first, pulling her in tight circles while I learned alone, slipping, scraping my knees. He said she needed the help more. I was independent. That word had followed me ever since, something they said with pride but meant as distance. The radio hummed static before a song faded in, an old Christmas classic, soft, innocent. I turned it off. The quiet felt truer. My mind kept replaying the moment Celine raised her glass. The tone in her voice wasn't playful, it was sharp, rehearsed, as if she'd been waiting to say it. Even the extra nobody. Maybe she didn't mean it to wound. Or maybe she did. People like her always said, it was just a joke, when the knife was already in. A stoplight glowed red ahead. I slowed, the car's engine humming low. Snow swirled in tiny eddies across the hood. In the reflection of the glass, I saw my own face, still, pale, unreadable. I whispered to no one, I'm not nobody. The words fogged the air, hung there, then disappeared. The light turned green. The drive back to my apartment stretched longer than usual. Every street looked the same, rows of quiet houses, lights flickering in windows, silhouettes of families leaning close over dinner tables. I imagined each one laughing, unaware of the woman driving past, hands steadying themselves on the steering wheel. When I reached the city, I parked outside my building and stayed inside the car. My phone buzzed once, an email notification. Probably work. I didn't check. The screen lit up my face in the dark, a small reflection of a life I'd built far away from that dining table. I took a deep breath. The air felt heavy, tasting faintly of salt and snow. I could have cried. But the tears never came. They hadn't for years. Inside, the lobby smelled like pine cleaner and faint perfume from someone who'd just passed through. I climbed the stairs instead of taking the elevator. Each step felt like shaking off a layer of old dust. When I reached my door, I hesitated before turning the key. The apartment beyond was small but mine. A single lamp on the counter, dishes stacked from breakfast, the soft hum of the heater. I set down my keys and leaned against the door, eyes closed. For a moment, I pictured their faces again, Celine laughing, Dad nodding, Mom pretending not to hear. It wasn't just tonight's insult. It was every missed birthday, every polite dismissal, every moment they'd said, "That's nice, dear," and moved on. My hands pressed flat against the wood. They didn't flinch, I whispered. That's how rehearsed it's become. I stepped further inside, slipped off my coat, let it fall where it landed. The silence wrapped around me like a blanket, not warm but real. In the kitchen, I poured a glass of water, the sound steady, grounding. My reflection in the window looked older than 31. Tired, maybe, but clearer. Outside, snow began again, slow and quiet. I touched the glass with my fingertips, watching the world blur through the frost. My voice was barely a whisper now, softer, calmer. Let them laugh. I turned off the light. The city outside pulsed faintly, a heartbeat larger than my own. The night held its breath, and for the first time in years, I didn't rush to fill the silence. The steam from my mug curled upward, slow and quiet, tracing invisible paths toward the ceiling. I sat cross-legged on the balcony, wrapped in the same sweater I'd worn last night, the one that still smelled faintly like fireplace smoke and clove. The sky hadn't quite made up its mind between fog and drizzle. A soft gray filtered through the glass, settling on everything like dust that refused to be brushed away. My phone lay on the table beside me, screen dark. I hadn't touched it since I left the house. Not even once. Inside, the apartment hummed with morning silence. No music. No news anchors. Just the faint buzz of heat through the vents and the occasional creak of pipes, reminding me that the space, too, was still settling, still learning how to hold me. I took a sip of coffee, lukewarm, a little bitter, and stared at the water in the distance. The harbor always looked soft from up here, like it didn't know how much it carried. Somewhere below, the city was waking up. Somewhere, people were rushing for the bus, checking calendars, juggling the million tiny things that build a life. And somewhere in that same timeline, my name was about to appear on a screen I hadn't been invited to. I didn't need to see it happen. I'd already lived every moment they never watched. The phone buzzed once, sharp against the wooden table. A notification. I hesitated. Then reached. Subject line, "Congratulations. You've made Forbes 30 under 30. My thumb hovered, not out of shock, but because I already knew what it said. I tapped. There it was. My photo, centered. Not cropped. No one else beside me. A headline beneath it, "Meet the woman reinventing B2B logistics with emotional precision." And a quote, mine, from a speech I barely remembered giving, "When you aren't given a seat, build a damn table." I didn't smile. Not really. I just blinked, slowly. I remembered the night I said those words. A conference in Portland. A room full of men who didn't listen until I spoke like I had nothing left to lose. My voice didn't shake then. It doesn't shake now. I set the phone down. Let the moment pass over me like light through a curtain. Softly. Slowly. It wasn't joy I felt. It was validation wrapped in exhaustion. I stood, stretching my arms, the cold brushing over my skin like breath. Inside, the kettle still sat on the stove, long cooled. I poured another mug, let the silence steep with it. Another buzz. This one louder. Longer. Mom. Followed by Celine. Then, family group. I stared at the names. The same people who couldn't find space for me at a folding chair were now dialing in line. I didn't answer. They didn't deserve this part. The screen lit again. A voicemail this time. I tapped it open, not to listen, just to watch the waveform dance. 32 seconds. Probably cheerful. Probably scripted. I set the phone down again, harder this time. In my notes app, I typed. You laughed. I left. You cheered. I was already gone. I stared at the words, wondering if I would send them. Wondering if they'd even understand. Then I backspaced. Word by word. Until the screen was blank again. There's a power in not explaining yourself to those who never listened the first time. I opened my laptop and found the Forbes article again. Read it as if it weren't about me. Then posted the link, not to Facebook, not to Instagram, not anywhere my family would see it. Instead, I shared it in a Slack channel I helped moderate. Women in Logistics Private Cohort. Caption, for the ones who built while being unseen. This one's for us. A few emojis appeared immediately, clapping hands, stars, a heart. One message read, you just gave me permission to stop apologizing. Another, we see you. And still, my phone lit up again. A text from Mom, we're so proud of you, honey. Why didn't you tell us sooner? Because you wouldn't have clapped. Not until someone else told you I was worth watching. I closed the message. Turned the phone face down. Sat with that feeling, not anger, not sadness. Just the quiet distance between what they gave and what I needed. It didn't ache the way it used to. It just hovered. Like smoke from a candle just blown out. Gently. The emails kept coming. Journalists. Investors. A woman from NPR who wanted to do a story on female founders building in the shadows. I said yes. Not because I needed the press, but because I wanted the next woman to know she didn't have to wait for applause. Especially not from the wrong crowd. The sun broke through around noon, faint and pale, but trying. I walked to the window, letting the warmth stretch across the floor like a permission slip. I poured the last of the coffee into my mug. Sat by the window. And let the silence do the talking. The light from the window shifted across the counter like a moving shadow. My coffee sat untouched, cooling in the same spot where I'd left it hours earlier. The quiet that had felt peaceful this morning now pressed heavy against my chest. My phone blinked once, twice, then buzzed without stopping. I slid it closer, not to answer, just to see. 8 missed calls. 4 voicemails. 23 unread texts. The first message preview read, so proud of you, followed by another, wish I'd known sooner. We would have celebrated properly. And then, come home, sweetheart. Let us make it up to you. The screen looked like a gallery of empty words. Every line dripping with a sweetness that had arrived too late. I scrolled past them all until I found Mom's voicemail. I pressed play. Her voice came through bright, breathy, rehearsed. We're just stunned. I mean wow. We always knew you'd do something one day. Call us, sweetheart, we have so much to talk about. I closed my eyes. The sound of her voice didn't sting anymore, it just felt foreign. No. You didn't know. And that's okay. I stopped needing you to. The message ended with a pause long enough for her to add something else, but she didn't. I set the phone face down and stared at the reflection in the dark screen. My face looked calm, detached, the way people look when they've already cried out every tear years ago. Another buzz. Another notification. This one from a number I hadn't seen in years. Dex. Guess you showed us all, huh? Didn't think you had it in you. Can I take you out for coffee? Just to catch up. Totally casual. The words sat there, harmless at first glance. But every syllable dripped with old condescension. I leaned back in my chair. My body remembered before my mind did, the sound of his laugh at 17, the way he looked at Celine across the cafeteria table. I'd been sitting 2 rows down, head buried in my laptop, pretending not to hear him say, "Pen's great, but she's too intense. Always proving something." Back then, I smiled like I didn't care. Now, I typed, "Hope you're well." Then deleted it. Typed again, "No thanks." Deleted that too. Finally, I just turned off the screen. Some ghosts deserve nothing more than silence. When I lifted my head, the apartment seemed smaller. The ticking clock louder. The hum of the fridge felt like a reminder, everything keeps running, even when you don't. I wandered to the window. The city below was waking from holiday slumber, cars inching through slush, people carrying leftover boxes of cheer that no one really wanted. Seattle in winter has a way of making joy look borrowed. Another buzz. This time from Instagram. I opened it before thinking. At the top of the feed, Celine. A video, her holding a wine glass, face perfectly lit by fairy lights. Caption, "So proud of my sister's big moment, sparkling heart briefcase, family first, proud big sis." The video played automatically. Celine's voice, high and rehearsed, filled the quiet. "She didn't even tell us. Can you believe that? Classic Penny." The word classic echoed. Like it was something to laugh about. I stared at the screen until it blurred. Then locked my phone. I didn't block her. I didn't comment. Blocking would mean I cared enough to protect myself. I didn't need to anymore. Instead, I opened my laptop. The cursor blinked against a white page, steady, patient, waiting. I opened the shared Google Doc labeled Startup Media Guidelines. Scrolling to the bottom, I added one line. No press quote may mention family members unless explicitly approved. The cursor stopped blinking, as if even the document understood the weight of the sentence. I hit save. I thought of the night before, of laughter spilling from a table that had never made room for me. The irony that the same mouths that laughed were now stretching to shout pride. I could almost hear Celine saying it, "We always believed in you." But they didn't. Not once. They watched from comfort while I carved something out of nothing. They saw the smoke of my effort and thought it was just noise. Now that the world saw the flame, they wanted warmth. I poured fresh coffee and took a sip. It tasted bitter again, the way truth does when you drink it too fast. The phone buzzed again, vibrating against the counter like an impatient heartbeat. Mom again. A text this time. "Dad says we should plan a family dinner to celebrate. You've made us all so proud." I exhaled. The word "us" felt like theft. I typed, then erased. Then finally sent just one line. "I'm busy building." Her reply came seconds later. "Don't be like that, Pen. Family's all you've got." I stared at the screen. If that were true, I'd have nothing. I didn't send that one. Some truths are better left unspoken, because they're already written into history. The sky outside had shifted again, grayer, heavier. A drizzle tapped softly against the glass, like fingers asking for entry. I opened Celine's post again, this time reading the comments. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years left hearts and clapping emojis. An aunt wrote, "You girls make the family proud." And Celine replied, "Always have, always will. Always have." The words caught somewhere between a laugh and a choke. She'd turned my absence into decoration, my silence into a mirror that made her look generous. I closed the app again. Quietly. Then sat at the kitchen island, phone turned face down, coffee cooling for the third time. The apartment buzzed again, emails, reminders, little digital hands tugging at me to react. I didn't. Instead, I opened my notebook, the one with torn edges and ink stains from late nights of trial and error. I flipped to the first page. The handwriting was shaky, uneven, younger. A list of goals, written in blue pen. Build something real. Never need permission again. Leave the table that doesn't have your name on it. I touched the page gently. Slowly. Each word still felt alive. Healing doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it just sits quietly in the middle of your kitchen while the world tries to get your attention. The phone buzzed once more. Another call from family group. I smiled softly. Pressed decline. They didn't get to cheer now, I whispered. Not after sitting silent for every other milestone. The next morning the world felt quieter, but not kinder. My inbox blinked like a restless heartbeat the moment I sat down at my desk. The air smelled of coffee and rain, a blend that usually meant peace. But peace doesn't come wrapped in family subject lines. The newest email sat at the top, neat and glowing. Subject: we want to celebrate you, Penny. Zazenda mum. I hesitated before opening it. A strange superstition, maybe. The same kind you get before a bad storm. Inside, a flyer attached in shimmering gold. A family celebration of achievement, it read. Underneath, an image of the Spokane Community Center, same one Celine used for her engagement party 3 years ago. The banner said, one family. 2 bright stars. Below that, Celine's photo, then mine, smaller, tucked in the bottom right corner like a footnote. The body of the email gushed. Darling, this will be such a beautiful moment for all of us. We're so proud. Your sister is taking care of the details, you know how organized she is. Everyone can't wait to see you again. My cursor hovered over the reply button. I could already hear Celine's voice behind every sentence. Your sister is taking care of it. That meant control, not kindness. I closed the laptop halfway, stared at the flyer again. The date circled and read, Saturday. 2 days away. They'd already chosen a venue, printed banners, written invitations. I hadn't even said yes. I called the number at the bottom of the flyer, the venue line. A woman answered, cheerful, professional. Community Center, this is Donna. Hi, I said, keeping my tone light. I'm calling about the Hart family event this Saturday. I just wanted to confirm the setup. Oh, yes, the celebration. Her voice perked. It's quite the production. Celine's been wonderful to work with. She's giving the opening speech. Your parents must be so proud of both of you. Right, I said softly. She's speaking first? Yes, she's the host. Host. Thank you, I murmured. That's all I needed. I hung up and sat still. The old air of that dining room, the laughter from Christmas night, it wasn't gone. It had just changed outfits. The same stage, same cast, same script. Different lighting. Celine always knew how to turn family shame into performance art. And Mom, she always knew how to clap at the right time. I scrolled through the photos still on my phone, old ones I never deleted. 6 years ago, the cousin's graduation party. I'd just won a regional tech award. The medal still hung crooked around my neck in the photo, my smile small, uncertain. Celine stood next to me, microphone in hand, hair curled to perfection. She sang that night, a song she didn't write, but it didn't matter. She stole the room, just like she always did. I remember waiting by the stage, holding my notes, expecting Dad to call me up. He didn't. By the time I got the microphone, half the guests had already gone outside for drinks. Mom patted my shoulder that night. You know your sister just loves attention, honey. Don't take it personally. I hadn't taken it personally. I had taken it permanently. The flyer sat open on my screen. A glittering celebration built on borrowed effort. I could almost hear Celine introducing me. My little sister finally did something incredible. We couldn't be prouder. I opened a new email. Typed. Thank you for the kind gesture. Unfortunately, I won't be able to attend. I stared at it. My fingers hesitated over kind. It didn't belong there. I deleted the word. Now it read. Thank you for the gesture. Unfortunately, I won't be able to attend. I hit send. The whoosh of the sent email sounded final, like a door clicking shut. I leaned back and let out a long breath. It came out shaky, but steady enough. The phone buzzed within minutes. Mom again. Penny, I just saw your reply. Are you sure? Everyone's looking forward to it. Don't ruin this, okay? This is about family. There it was again, that soft guilt disguised as love. Family, I repeated quietly. It's always about family when it benefits you. What's that supposed to mean? She asked, her voice tightening. It means I'm not your trophy, I said. Not anymore. She sighed, long and dramatic, the way she did when pretending to be patient. Honey, we just want to honor you. Don't be so negative. I'm not being negative, I replied. I'm being clear. There was a pause. Then the click of her disconnecting first. The silence afterward was colder than the air outside. I turned back to my computer. If they wanted a show, they'd have to perform it without me. I opened the company's press kit on our internal drive. The folder labeled, Family. Inside, old photos I'd allowed years ago, shots from holidays, smiling with Celine at Thanksgiving, Mom at the kitchen counter pretending she baked the pie I brought. I dragged the folder to the trash. The computer asked, "Are you sure you want to delete these items?" "Yes," I whispered. The sound of the file disappearing was quieter than I expected. Next, I uploaded new images. Our office, my team, the late-night brainstorming sessions that built everything from scratch. My real family, the people who stayed when things broke, who didn't need a headline to care. I clicked save. A small edit, but one they'd never see coming. Later that night, I sat on the balcony again. The air was sharp, almost metallic. Across the street, someone's Christmas lights still blinked in tired rhythm. My phone buzzed once more. Celine this time. "Mom's upset," her message read. "You really hurt her feelings. She's just trying to be supportive. Maybe don't be so ungrateful?" Ungrateful. The word rolled across the screen like poison wrapped in pink. I typed, "Support looks different when it's real." Then deleted it. Some arguments aren't worth the energy it takes to type them. Instead, I just looked at the photo she'd attached, a mock-up of the event banner. One family. 2 bright stars. Her name bold. Mine faded gray. They always loved symmetry, even if it wasn't honest. I closed my eyes, the image still glowing behind my lids. They were turning me into a prop again. But not this time. I opened my notebook, the one where I kept reminders to myself. Under a scribbled header that said, "Rules of Survival," I added a new line. "If they rewrite your story, write louder." The night deepened. My inbox pinged with confirmation of the press kit update. The company's new website would go live by morning. For the first time, my name would stand alone, no Hart family in the metadata. It wasn't rebellion. It was correction. I leaned against the railing, eyes tracing the faint shimmer of city lights and puddles below. Somewhere in Spokane, they were probably printing programs, rehearsing speeches, buying flowers. Mom in her pearls, Celine in her spotlight. Maybe they'd still toast me, pretending I was part of it all. Maybe Dad would nod like I'd always been his quiet success story. They could have their show. I had my truth. When I went back inside, I stood by the mirror in the hallway. For the first time, I didn't see the girl trying to be part of something. I saw the woman who had built something else entirely. The flyer still sat in the trash folder on my laptop. I emptied it without hesitation. "You don't get to rebrand me now that the world finally sees me," I said softly. The words didn't echo. They didn't need to. They landed right where they belonged, inside the quiet that I finally owned. The room glowed faintly from the city lights bleeding through the blinds. I had just brushed my teeth, ready to end the day, when my phone lit up on the counter. A notification pulsed across the dark screen. "Celine Hart tagged you in a post." My stomach dropped before I even touched it. I already knew this wasn't good. The post opened with the usual glitter, our family's specialty. A picture of my Forbes feature placed side by side with an old photo of the two of us as kids. She had chosen the one where I was half hidden behind her, hair messy, my smile uncertain. The caption read, "Sisters. Success. Support. Always proud of our girl 2 hearts." It was perfectly designed for sympathy clicks, sentimental enough to be praised, fake enough to make my skin crawl. I stared at the post until the words blurred. Every like, every heart emoji was another hand patting her back, another person saying, "What a loving sister you have." My jaw ached. I hadn't realized I was clenching it. I scrolled through the comments, our cousins, old classmates, even neighbors from Spokane. "She's such a good role model. You two are such an inspiration. Family like this is everything." Everything. The word caught in my throat. The night I closed my first investor deal came back to me in fragments, the sound of rain outside the office window, the cramp in my wrist from signing contracts, the elation that had nowhere to go. I texted Celine that night, giddy despite myself. "Can't believe I closed a 6-figure seed. It's finally happening." Her reply came 5 minutes later, "That's great, Pen. Guess what? Dior invited me to host their West Coast influencer launch." I'd congratulated her, of course. That's what I was trained to do, shrink my joy until it could fit comfortably inside hers. Now, her smiling face sat beside mine on her profile, as though she had built the road I walked on. I took a screenshot. Not for proof, just for memory. Evidence that I wasn't imagining it this time. The quiet in my apartment grew heavy, like something waiting to break. I opened my laptop and began to type. Hi Celine. Please remove the post. I did not give consent to use my photo or likeness in promotional content. If it's not down within 24 hours, I'll proceed with legal counsel. I read it twice. No greeting. No sign-off. No apology. I hit send. The cursor blinked, steady and cold. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. Her name lit up on the screen. I ignored the call. Then came the message. You're being dramatic. I'm just showing love. I typed back, fingers steady. You didn't show love when I slept in the basement. You didn't show love when you laughed first. I sent it before I could soften it. The message turned blue. She read it almost instantly. No reply. I could picture her now, somewhere with perfect lighting, telling herself she'd done nothing wrong, convincing her reflection that she was the bigger person. I went back to the mirror in my hallway. The light hit my face differently now. I looked older, not tired, but firm. It was the kind of look that comes from deciding what you will no longer tolerate. The phone remained silent for the rest of the evening. Later, when I logged into our company website to approve updates, I paused over my bio. The line that once read, "Born and raised in Spokane, Washington," made me stop. That sentence had never felt like home. I deleted it. In its place, I wrote, "Built in silence. Raised by rejection. Defined by persistence." The words glowed against the screen, steady and clean. There was a calm that followed, quiet but full. I thought of every time they'd dismissed what I made, Dad calling my work a nice hobby, Mom saying, "It's so impressive what computers can do these days," Celine using the word cute when I described a patent proposal. They had always framed my success like it was a phase, something temporary, a decorative detail in their larger family portrait. Now, they wanted to borrow it. That night, I sat on my couch with the lights off, watching the city pulse through my windows. The hum of traffic was distant, but rhythmic. I felt the faint ache of something close to relief. My email pinged again. Another message from Celine. "Mom says you're overreacting. You should be grateful we're supporting you. You think you got here alone?" I read it twice. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I typed, "Support means standing beside, not standing on." Then deleted it. People like Celine didn't hear what wasn't convenient. I set the phone face down, took a slow breath, and let the air leave my lungs in a long, even sigh. The room smelled like rain again. Somewhere outside, thunder rolled softly across the water, distant but deliberate. Gently, I closed my eyes. I remembered being 16, lying on my stomach in that cold basement, soldering parts from a broken radio Dad had called junk. I remembered the first spark, the faint hum of sound returning. That moment when silence turned into proof. I hadn't realized then that I was learning how to fix what people broke without permission. It was the same now. Only this time, the thing being repaired was me. When I opened my eyes, the phone screen glowed again. A flood of notifications, tags, comments, reposts of Celine's photo before she'd even taken it down. Her caption now edited, "She's mad I posted this, but that's just how some people are." Woman shrugging. The audacity made me laugh, soft but bitter. I sent one final message. "Take it down. Last warning." 5 minutes later, the post disappeared. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just gone. But that small act of disappearance felt like balance returning. Before bed, I poured myself a glass of water and stood by the window. The city looked like it was exhaling, each light blinking softly through the drizzle. In the reflection, I could still see both of us, me, standing still, and the ghost of my sister's face beside mine on that post. "They used to erase me," I said quietly. "Now they're trying to borrow me." I turned away from the glass. The words didn't echo. They didn't need to. They belonged to me, and for once, that was enough. I arrived 10 minutes before call time. Not early enough to seem eager, not late enough to appear distracted. Just on time, deliberate, composed, invisible in all the ways I'd trained myself to be. The conference hall buzzed with low energy. Industry leaders mingled with college startups, everyone clutching name tags and recyclable tote bags. The air smelled like hotel carpet and oversteeped tea. My panel was the headliner of the afternoon. The subject, building quiet empires. A concept I hadn't created, but had unwittingly become the face of. Backstage, I pulled on my blazer. Black, tailored, simple. No jewelry. No earrings. Just me. The moderator greeted me briefly. A firm handshake. No fluff. The way I preferred. You ready, Penelope? I nodded once. The lights dimmed. Someone mic'd me up. Then a voice in my ear, "You're live in 5." I stepped out into the spotlight. The stage lights were brighter than I'd expected. My vision blurred momentarily, but my feet stayed steady. I spotted rows of faces, some familiar from LinkedIn, some just eager eyes and forward-leaning postures. Cameras lined the back wall. I sat in the second chair from the left. The other founders took their places beside me. When the moderator started speaking, his voice rolled with ease. Welcome to our panel on building resilience in silence. Today we're joined by Penelope Hart, the founder and CEO of Harborline Systems. She made Forbes this month. You've seen her quote go viral, "When no one gives you space, build a damn table." Laughter. Applause. I smiled lightly, but inside, the words still stung, not because I hadn't meant them, but because I'd only ever said them in a room where no one I loved had been listening. The moderator looked at me. Penelope, you scaled in silence. Why? I paused. Then said, because silence isn't always peace. Sometimes it's exile. Sometimes it's fuel. The room stilled. I could feel them listening. Another question followed. What made you build instead of break? I held the mic tighter. When your own table won't make space for you, you learn to build one. Nods across the audience. A few people clapped softly. A flashbulb went off in the third row. Then another. I was answering the next question when I saw her. At the back of the press line, too polished for the room, in a cream blazer and heels that clicked louder than her smile. Celine. She wasn't on the guest list. I knew because I had read every name. She waved. Big. Wide. Smile too perfect. I kept talking, but part of me stepped outside myself, watching it unfold from a distance, like watching your reflection in a store window and not recognizing the face. A reporter leaned into his mic. Is that your sister? I didn't look at him. I looked at her. And then I said, clear and cool, that's someone who once called me extra. The silence in the room thudded against the walls. Celine's smile flickered. Only for a second. But I saw it. She tried to move forward, cutting between rows of press badges and lanyards. Her heels catching slightly in the carpet. I stepped to the side. Gently. Without a word. The moderator spoke quickly. Shall we continue? I nodded. Please. The next question came. I answered. My voice didn't shake. My hands didn't move. Celine stood near the curtain, watching. I didn't invite her closer. She stood at the edge, frozen like a mannequin in the wrong window. The panel ended with applause that felt different this time. Not because they admired me, but because they'd seen something that couldn't be unseen. Backstage, my PR manager handed me a bottle of water. Her eyes were wide. We're scrubbing her from the footage. Clean cut. You okay with that? I nodded. Not out of vengeance. Out of necessity. As I sat down in the dressing room, the adrenaline faded, leaving only breath and quiet. I looked in the mirror, face lit by fluorescent bulbs, edges of exhaustion soft around my mouth. But the woman staring back didn't look erased. She looked certain. The phone buzzed again. Text from Mom. Celine said you embarrassed her. She flew out to support you. Was that necessary? I didn't respond. 10 minutes later, another text. Pen, this isn't who you are. Family is supposed to forgive each other. That line. It always came after they did something unforgivable. I put the phone in my bag and left the message unanswered. In the car, the city blurred past the window. People walked along sidewalks, arms full of takeout containers and weekend plans. No one knew who I was. No one needed to. I leaned my head back against the seat. She stepped into my light. I didn't move. The spotlight stayed where it belonged. By the time I got back to my apartment, the sky had shifted into that gray-blue color that always came before the rain. I dropped my bag by the door, slipped off my shoes, and went to the kitchen without turning on any lights. My hands moved on instinct, reaching for the kettle, the mug, the tea I kept for nights that felt like echoes. As the water boiled, I pulled my phone from my coat pocket. One new notification blinked across the top. You've been added to family group chat. It was such a strange sentence. Flat. Deceptively warm. I tapped it open, thumb hovering as if the screen might burn. There it was. A message from Mom, all exclamation points and borrowed emotion. "We're so proud of how you handled the interview. Let's move forward. One family." Below it, Celine had added a pink heart emoji. Just that. I scrolled upward, searching for history. But there was none. They'd removed me months ago, no goodbye, no warning. Just gone. And now, with the world watching, they wanted me back. It didn't even hurt. Not in the way it used to. I opened Facebook on reflex, not because I needed to see anything, but because part of me already knew what I'd find. And there it was. Mom's newest post. "Proud mom of 2 brilliant daughters, sparkling heart." The caption under the photo read, "She's always been our rock, even when quiet." A part of me blinked. Just blinked. Not once in 31 years had she said that to my face. Not when I got my first scholarship. Not when I paid my own rent at 19. Not when I taught myself how to build logistics software in a basement lit by flickering fluorescent tubes. But now, with a headline to attach her name to, I had suddenly become our rock. I set the phone down and stared at the floor. The teakwood shimmered faintly in the half-light. My chest felt tight, but not with grief. It was something quieter. Like suffocation in a room full of people who call you by the wrong name. I walked to the window. The sky had started to cry, drizzle tapping gently against the glass. The last straw didn't always come loud. Sometimes it came with a memory. I saw myself at 20, standing in my aunt's backyard, clutching a binder full of notes. I had been asked to present my college project, something about supply chain resilience. No one had looked up. Celine had taken the microphone after me and sung a Carrie Underwood song. The crowd roared. Dad wiped a tear. Someone handed her flowers. I remember slipping my binder back into my bag. Quietly. Slowly. Now, I opened the group chat again. My hands didn't shake. I typed. "You never asked what I built. You never asked how I survived. I didn't leave. You made no room." Then I tapped leave group. There was no confirmation screen. No dramatic animation. Just silence. I stood for a moment, letting the stillness settle into my bones. Then I made tea. The kettle hissed. The steam rose in soft spirals. I carried the mug out to the balcony. Seattle stretched before me, indifferent and stunning. A light drizzle brushed against my skin. I tilted my head back. Let it fall over my cheeks like a quiet baptism. This time, no one would rewrite my story but me. I had tried so hard to be what they needed. To be useful. To be lovable in the ways they defined. But all I ever did was shrink. Now, I wasn't shrinking. I wasn't growing louder, either. I was just becoming real. My phone buzzed again. Not from the group chat. That door was shut. A text from Celine. "That was childish, Pen. You just made Mom cry." I didn't respond. 2 hours later, another message. "You think you're so above us now? You don't get to act like you're the only one who ever felt left out." Still, I didn't respond. Because if I had, I would have said things that would stick to her skin forever. And I wasn't interested in wounding people who had already made their bed from broken glass. Instead, I opened my laptop. Wrote a blog post I'd been putting off. Title, What They Never Saw. I didn't name names. I didn't assign blame. I just told the truth. About the silence. The invisibility. The slow climb from the basement to the boardroom. About the nights I fell asleep with code lines blurring in my vision, praying one day someone might care. And how the moment they did, it was already too late. Healing didn't arrive suddenly. The blog went live an hour later. By the next morning, it had over 200 comments, mostly women, mostly strangers, saying the same thing. I thought I was the only one. I went to bed that night with my window cracked open, the sound of rain filling the room. The teacup sat empty on the nightstand, still warm from where I had cradled it like something alive. They remembered me only when the world did. That memory isn't mine anymore. The rain had stopped by morning, but the fog hadn't. It lingered like a quiet truth outside my windows, thick, low, and still. It didn't demand attention. It simply stayed, pressing softly against the glass like a reminder. Not all clarity comes with a crash of thunder or a bolt of lightning. Some truths arrive slow and quiet, like mist creeping in at dawn, until it fills the room, and you can't pretend you don't see it anymore. I wasn't planning to clean that day. But something in me shifted, like a drawer that had been jammed shut for years finally giving way. So I found myself reaching for the shelves, not to organize, but to make room. Space, not for things, but for breath. For truth. For release. I started with the cabinet in the corner, the one high above the fridge that no one ever reached for. I had almost forgotten it existed. Dust had turned the handle a shade darker, the metal dull. I opened it slowly, careful not to send anything toppling out. The photo album was buried between an old atlas with torn pages and a frame with a cracked pane. The album smelled like old paper, damp closets, and time. I brought it to the table, sat down, and opened it with cautious fingers, my breath caught somewhere behind my ribs. The beginning was predictable: baby pictures, birthday cakes, school portraits with bad haircuts and crooked teeth. I kept flipping, only half present, until Christmas 2005. There it was. A family photo I didn't remember taking. They were all there, Mom, Dad, and Celine front and center, smiling like she was the star of a sitcom. Red ribbon in her hair, hands clasped on her lap. Everyone looked perfectly posed, perfectly polished. I was there too. Sort of. My left arm. Part of my cheek. The edge of a sweater I used to wear all the time, striped, blue and green. The caption underneath was written in Celine's handwriting. Big loopy letters with little hearts over the eyes. Classic Christmas. Everyone who matters. The words shouldn't have hit hard. But they did. Not because they shocked me, but because they didn't. That was the part that stung the most. The absence felt intentional. Practiced. Like I had always been the afterthought, the blur on the edge of the frame. I stared at the photo, and the memory started to fill in. That year, I'd asked Mom if I could wear the dress Grandma Etta mailed me. It was soft lilac with tiny pearl buttons. She said it was too wrinkled and wouldn't look nice in photos. Celine wore her new red one instead. I spent most of that evening in the kitchen, keeping the cider warm and staying out of the way. I turned the page. The air in the room felt thicker. The fog outside hadn't moved, but now it felt like it was inside too. Suddenly, another memory pulled me under. 17 years old. High school hallway. The scent of cheap perfume and mechanical pencils. Celine leaning against the lockers, her arm linked with Alicia's. Her voice cut through the hum of the hallway. Penelope could disappear and no one would notice. Alicia laughed without hesitation. Loud. Unbothered. And me? I smiled. Not because it was funny. Not even because I agreed. But because it was easier. It was safer than silence. I closed the album carefully. My hands rested on the cover for a long moment. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't crying. There was no sting in my chest. No eruption. Just stillness. I stood, walked to the small entryway shelf, and reached for a box I hadn't touched in over a decade. It was labeled in faded marker, old. I had no idea what was inside anymore. Dust rose like confetti as I opened it. Scraps of another life. School projects, forgotten notes, a chipped mug from my first internship, a broken keychain from a college fair. It was all there, stuck in time. And then, at the bottom, like it had been waiting. A ribbon. Torn, faded, second place. Science fair, 2007. It wasn't shiny anymore. The blue had dulled. But as soon as I touched it, I remembered. The smell of solder. The way my hands trembled with pride when the model lit up. The nights I stayed up, not because someone pushed me to, but because I believed in something. Taped to the back was a sticky note. My mother's handwriting. Don't mix this with Celine's awards. I didn't blink. Didn't wince. I just sat there. Breathing in the truth of it all. Not in pain. In recognition. That was the shift. That was clarity. I picked up the ribbon and the photo album and walked to my desk. I scanned the photo, the Christmas one, and adjusted the crop. This time, I made sure my arm, my cheek, my existence was fully in the frame. Then I uploaded it to my private blog. Caption. That's me. Behind the blur. I used to think being left out hurt more than being erased. I was wrong. They're the same. No hashtags. No names. Just truth. I hit publish. Then I closed the screen. That night, I didn't sleep deeply, but I didn't toss and turn either. The ache in my chest wasn't new. But it was no longer fighting for attention. It was simply there, quiet, known, almost understood. The next morning, there was a message. Alicia. I saw your post. I'm sorry. I laughed when I should have spoken. I stared at her words for a long time. Not because I didn't believe her, but because I'd forgotten she still existed in my orbit. That she still cared enough to watch. I replied simply. It's okay. I spoke when I should have walked away. And that was enough. No need to reopen the wound. Some things don't need closure. They just need to be acknowledged. I spent the rest of the morning sorting through more of my past. A folder full of newsletters from the church we used to attend. The kind that told you how to behave but never asked how you were doing. A sweatshirt Mom gave me when I was 16, oversized, beige, and smelling faintly of laundry soap and expectations. I folded them all neatly. Set them aside. Softly. Quietly. Not with anger. Not with bitterness. But with space. Healing doesn't always come with grand gestures or dramatic breakthroughs. Sometimes it arrives disguised as a forgotten ribbon, or a blurry photo, or a message from someone you assumed forgot you. Sometimes, healing doesn't say a word. It just lets you breathe. For the first time, I didn't need anyone else to remember me. Because I did. And that was enough. The quiet lingered the next morning, not heavy, not sad, just steady. Like a hand pressed gently against my back. I moved slowly through the apartment, touching objects like they were old friends I hadn't greeted in a while. My fingers paused at the bookshelf drawer, one I rarely opened. Inside were mismatched papers, a spare charger, and beneath them, a yellowed envelope. I recognized the handwriting immediately, tight, careful loops in blue ink. It was from Grandma Etta. I held it for a moment, unsure why my breath hitched. Then I sat on the edge of my bed and opened it. The letter unfolded with the sound of memory. Penelope. You were always my brightest secret. I watched you from across rooms where you were never seen. I saw you carry trays when others dropped things. I saw you listen when others talked over you. One day, you won't need a seat at their table. You'll have your own. My hands trembled, but not from sadness. From recognition. The tears came quietly this time. Not in protest. Just a soft surrender to something old finally being held. I pressed the letter to my chest. For years, I had been building in the dark. And she had known. I walked into the living room. My eyes landed on the walnut dining table I'd bought months ago but had never truly used. 10 chairs, equal height, no hierarchy. A table made not for appearances, but for presence. I lit candles at the center. Laid 10 simple white plates. Folded napkins. No centerpiece. No seating chart. I didn't need to impress anyone. The photo wall across from the table was nearly empty. I didn't hang family portraits. I didn't frame fake holidays. But I took the letter from Grandma Etta and slipped it into a floating frame. Hung it right above the head of the table. You'll have your own. The bell rang at 6:32. Right on time. The first guest was Nora, my friend from the lab who once stayed with me when I had the flu. Then came Marcus, my mentor during the first startup crash. A neighbor arrived with homemade sourdough and a shy smile. Even Miguel, the single dad from down the hall, brought his 6-year-old who clutched a toy dinosaur. No one asked about Forbes. No one said, congratulations. They brought bread. And tea. And time. That was enough. I watched as the table filled, not with noise, but with stories. The kind that unfolded slowly. A joke about traffic. A memory about burnt cookies. Someone played a quiet song from their phone. I passed around slices of a plain vanilla cake. No frosting. Just dense and sweet enough to feel like childhood. They didn't know the story behind the cake. But I did. I was 8 when I sat on the porch alone during my birthday. Everyone had forgotten, too busy arguing inside. Grandma Etta came out with a slice of cake wrapped in foil. No candles. Just a spoon and her hand gently guiding it to mine. They forgot again, huh? She whispered. I nodded. Well, good, she said, with a wink. That means more for us. More for us. I looked around this table now, this table I built. And I realized, she had meant this moment, too. The party wound down gently. People gathered plates, wiped crumbs, hugged goodbye without fanfare. No one asked to take photos. No one posted. They had just shown up. After the door clicked shut for the last time, I stood alone in the quiet. The apartment smelled like cinnamon and candle wax. I didn't rush to clean. I just walked to the window and stared at the city beyond. A low hum of traffic. A flicker of lights across the bay. Peace doesn't always arrive as a parade. Sometimes, it walks in slowly, sets down a bowl of soup, and says, "Stay." I whispered to the empty room, they never made space. And then, gently, but I did. I turned off the lights one by one. The last candle flickered out as I stood beside the table. My hand ran along the edge, solid wood, smooth and warm. This table had no kids' seats. No head of the table. No one left standing. Just space. And this time? I chose who sat with me. Sometimes, the loudest victory is the one spoken in silence. If you've ever been called too much, too invisible, or just extra, remember, you were never meant to fit at their table. You were born to build your own. What would your table look like? And who gets a seat? Tell me in the comments, and if this story found something quiet in you, subscribe for more. We tell stories that don't just end, they echo.